I'm going to be talking about what makes the most sense to buy right now as far as your use case. So we're going to go over like high end, we're going to go on budget, we're going to go over AMD, we're going to go over basically everything as far as what I think would be the best for you as far as a GPU. You know, if you are just a gamer, if you stream, if you do productivity work. So at the time of this recording, the 40 series and the 7000 series from AMD and Nvidia are not out yet. So we're going to be going over the 3000 series and the 6000 series for both competitors. And we're going to go over basically just everything, what I think would be the best for you and what I think will be the best for you as far as like gaming, all that fun stuff. So quick disclaimer, I've never had a preference between either. Nvidia and AMD make awesome cards for different use cases. I personally have used a RX 550, 580, RX 6600 XT, and then as far as Nvidia goes, I've used a 1650, I've used T710, I've used a 3060, a 3060 Ti. I just used like basically cards from all over the place. Let's hop into my computer and I'll kind of go over what I think would be the best as far as, you know, what you should and shouldn't buy. All right, so we're gonna go over what I think are the best GPUs for the money. We're gonna go high end, low end, AMD. We're gonna go, I mean, Intel still hasn't released their GPUs, even though they keep saying they're going to. So we're not even gonna touch on that. As far as what I think, the best GPU right now is the 3090 Ti. And then as far as AMD goes, it is the 6950 XT. Both incredibly good graphics cards. I actually wanted to get an AMD graphics card. We're gonna go, I'll actually show you right now what I was going to get. I'm going to go 6950 XT. I wanted this power color one. It was on Amazon for, I think it was like 1,089, something like that. I actually don't know how much it is now, but we're not going to jump too far into that. But right now, I mean, you can get it. You can get this Speedster Mech one. It's the 6950 XT. So this is the highest end for AMD. If you're going to choose AMD, you're mainly going to be using your graphics card for gaming. The difficult thing with AMD, which is why I haven't swapped back over to AMD, is their encoder. Their encoder is not up to par when it comes to like video recording, rendering, stuff like that, which kind of sucks because I really like AMD software and kind of how you can, you know, modify things a lot easier than Nvidia. I do like Nvidia a lot and they do offer a ton of features, but personally, I don't use ray tracing. I game at 1080p and I don't need DLSS or any of that stuff. The only reason I have an Nvidia card is because the encoder is leagues above AMD's. And so I'm hoping with this new release of cards that AMD has kind of, you know, upgraded it to a point where it's at least on par with what Nvidia has out now. I know that AMD is not as established as Nvidia. As far as their products go, I mean, they make amazing products. I mean, I just upgraded to a 5900X. If you guys haven't seen that video, go check it out. An awesome processor. I mean, I've only used AMD processors. I've also dabbled in Intel like years ago, but as far as processors go, I mean, AMD is kind of what I generally go towards. I currently have the 5900X and I have a 3080 right now. It's the Asus Tough one. It's the 12 gigabyte. So, I mean, if you're gonna go for an AMD card, I mean, and you have the money and you really want to game at like 4K or high 1440p, stuff like that, go for a 6900 XT or go 6950 XT. Just going to give you so much performance. I mean, if 1440p, 4K, easy on those cards. The only thing you have to think about is that you're not going to be getting DLSS, ray tracing, stuff like that. The encoder is going to be a little bit worse, but if you're just gaming, I would always go AMD. Jackie has been using an AMD card and it's been absolutely amazing for her. She's had no issues at all. So that's just something to think about. As far as Nvidia goes, I mean, we can look at what a 3090 Ti is going for right now. It's about what a 3090 was actually going for at the time, which is interesting to think about because when these cards came out, I mean, you were paying like $2,500, $3,000 during this whole shortage, which is absolutely insane. Go on, you know, AMD's website, go on Newegg right now and just order these cards. I mean, you know, I couldn't personally stomach paying $1,500 for a graphics card, but if you have the money and you really want it, by all means. It makes absolutely no sense to cheap out because for me personally, spend as much as you think you need on a graphics card. You know, I was running a 3060 Ti, which was an amazing card. I love it. I was limited with the amount of VRAM, and I was also getting encoder overloads, which is also why I upgraded the GPU and the CPU. And so now I don't run into any of those issues, which is perfect for me. But in your case, I mean, you might not care, you know. And the issue with encoder overloads is that you run into frame rate drops, and so sometimes you'll see your stream or whatever you're recording doing really well, and then all of a sudden you'll see this weird kind of blotchy mess, and then it will go back. And so it just means that you're basically capping out whatever encoder you're using, if you're using the encoder for the CPU or if you're using the encoder for the GPU. And so the 3060 Ti is an amazing graphics card, but as far as streaming, recording, and you know, certain tasks, it might overload it depending on the settings that you're playing on. So my recommendation and what I did for that card specifically was that I would lower, so like I would go on and say, okay, I can play, you know, Horizon Zero Dawn at max settings and get close to 100 FPS at 1080p. So let me lower it down to high, so I'm not overloading my GPU and my CPU. And so now I can record and not run into issues. That's what I was doing before. Now I can just go on, put it up to max settings, and I don't have any issues. So that's something that I wanted. I also think you should buy a little bit more than what you think you need, just because you'll have that extra wiggle room just in case you decide that you want to stream or you want to, you know, start recording videos or just basically do any of that stuff. So something to think about. I just wanted to kind of throw that in there. As far as AMD and Nvidia, I mean, if we're looking at, you know, somebody that's just on a budget, they don't want to spend too much on a graphics card, I think a 6600 or a 6600 XT would be a good buy right now. You can get them actually for really cheap. I mean, you can get a 6600 for $279 right now, which is crazy. And then there's a $220 rebate. So you're actually getting it for like 260, which is crazy. And then there's this one right now, you can get it for 259, 279, 279. I mean, it's just crazy. I actually have the 6600 XT. I'll show you the one that I have specifically. So I have this one specifically. So I basically paid twice what this is going for right now. It's currently new for $379, so $380. I paid about $600 for my 6600 XT, which is crazy to think about, you know. And I won it in the Newegg Shuffle. I thought it was an amazing graphics card, and it still is an amazing graphics card for 1080p and then medium to low settings at 1440. But you know, now that prices are coming down, I'm kind of like, you know, I kind of spent all this money on a graphics card that I'm actually not using anymore. You know, I've been debating on selling it or keeping it just as a backup card or whatever I want to do. But it's crazy to think about. You know, I paid basically twice this for this graphics card, and now you can buy it for half of that. And we all kind of knew that that was going to happen at some point. You know, Ethereum and you know, just scalpers in general, you know, the market is basically flooded with graphics cards right now. And once Ethereum moves to proof of stake, which I believe is sometime in September, the market more than likely will be flooded with graphics cards. I mean, you know, we're going to have tons and tons of used cards. You know, you might be able to buy a 3080 for $500 used or less, which is just crazy to think about. There are tons of people that do it. I prefer to buy new products depending on what the product is, especially for GPUs and CPUs, because I like warranties. And for me, that's just kind of like a safety net thing. You know, if I buy a graphics card, I plug it in and, you know, I don't get a display or something happens where, you know, I use it for like a week and then it just randomly shuts down on me. I would prefer to be able to go to the manufacturer and say, hey, this isn't working anymore. What can you guys do to rectify this? And, you know, most of the time it's send us the graphics card. They'll look at it, deem it, you know, hey, it's broken or some issues with, you know, the heat or fans or whatever, send you a new one, or they'll repair it and then send you back, you know, what your graphics card. So that's just something that I personally like. You know, I also have no preference on, you know, companies. I don't personally buy from Gigabyte just because of the way they handled their exploding power supply issues, and then they just decided to basically say, well, you know, it happens and it's not really our problem. Which is not something that I like to see within companies, and so I don't personally buy from them. I buy a lot of products from Asus and EVGA personally, and then MSI as well. Pretty much everybody else, I just don't want to buy from Gigabyte. I don't recommend them to people. If you were going to buy them, if you were going to buy a Gigabyte card, which there are tons of people that have Gigabyte cards, you know, and they have no issues with them and they run perfectly fine. I just personally won't buy anything from them. But I also own, I think all of my graphics cards are actually from Asus, which just kind of happened. It's not something that I planned. It just, you know, it happened. I have a 6600 XT currently, a 2060, 3060 Ti, a 3080. Jackie has a 6700 XT as well. The box is somewhere. And then I have a 1650, which my friend is borrowing right now because his 1080 Ti died. It's just, you know, I have no preference. It just seems like I have a lot of Nvidia cards. I also have a lot of hardware in general. I just upgraded my CPU. I just upgraded and now I have like all these fans and other various things, but that's totally off topic. What I think personally you should buy if you're kind of in the budget for, you know, budget graphics card that you don't need ray tracing or DLSS, go for a 6600 or a 6600 XT. If you do need those features, then go for a 3060 or a 3060 Ti. Try for a 3060 Ti because you'll get a lot more performance out of that card, but definitely go for those two. If you're looking for something as far as like 1440p, streaming, you know, stuff like that, I would go 3070 Ti, maybe a 3080, depending on your budget. I actually have this card, but it's a 3060 Ti. Amazing card. Keeps it, you know, it's super cool. It, you know, I don't really have issues. The only thing that's a little bit weird to me is that the 3060 Ti, the 3070 Ti all have 8 gigabytes of VRAM. But when you go to AMD, the 6600 has 8 gigabytes, the 6600 XT has 8 gigabytes, and then the 6700 has 10 gigabytes, which, you know, doesn't really make sense to me why AMD can put more VRAM, but Nvidia can't. 6700 XT has 12 gigabytes of VRAM, which is actually the same amount as the 3080. So I feel like Nvidia needs to kind of like figure out their VRAM situation and kind of accommodate it, you know, the way that it should. I mean, I feel like if you're buying higher tier cards, you should get more VRAM. So personally, I feel like the 3060 and also the 3060 just non-Ti has no business having 12 gigabytes of VRAM. Makes absolutely no sense. It should have 8. You know, it makes absolutely no sense. And I think that was kind of like a cash grab for them. They're like, hey, you know, it has 12 gigabytes of VRAM, and so, you know, it's a lot better. But then you come out with the 3060 Ti, which only has 8, but performs a lot better. So personally, I think that the 3060 should have 8 gigabytes. The 3060 Ti should have between 8 and 10, probably just 8, you know, and just make it a little bit faster. And the 3070 and 3070 Ti should have 10 to 12 gigabytes. That's what I think they should have done. 3080 have 12 gigabytes, but it's interesting because the 6800 and the 6900, they have 16 gigabytes. So I personally think the 3080 should have something like that. You know, it's bizarre to me that they decided to just kind of cut the VRAM like that. Oh, but I'm not a GPU manufacturer, and I'm also not somebody that has influence at Nvidia, so, or AMD. So that's just something to think about. But as far as middle of the road cards go, I would go a 6700, 6800 on the high end, and then 3070, 3070 Ti, 3080 on the middle end. High end, I mean, we're going 6950 XT, 6900, and then a 3090 and 3090 Ti and 3080 Ti. Those are just something to think about. I mean, you know, you can look at tons and tons of companies. I personally would not buy from Gigabyte or Zotac. I just have no interest in those companies. They don't have good customer service practices, and I just they just, you know, they're not good companies, in my opinion. And there are tons of people that say they're perfectly fine. It's just a personal opinion, you know, I just don't have any interest in them. But you know, I just want to come on here, talk to you guys about, you know, what I think makes the most sense for you in terms of Nvidia and AMD. You know, AMD has tons of features. They just don't have ray tracing, DLSS, anything like that. their encoder is a little bit worse, and you know, I've used AMD for an encoder, and it's okay, but there's definitely some parts that could be improved. If it got to the point where Nvidia's is now in the next generation, I will buy a AMD card immediately. I personally can't get past the encoder, which is not as great as Nvidia's. So, you know, and Nvidia, I mean, their encoder is great, you know, and you're paying for all that extra stuff. You know, that's why Nvidia always has prices a little bit higher than AMD, just because they know that, you know, our performance is a little bit better. We have better ray tracing, DLSS, we have a better encoder, you know, more people go towards Nvidia just because of those specific things. So that's just something to think about. But I wanted to hop on here, talk to you guys about this. I really hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I will catch you in the next one. Peace.